Well, good morning and welcome everyone. Here we are with another Choice Chat here with the Tennessee Federation for Children team with myself, John Patton. I'm the Tennessee State Director. We also have with us Shaka Mitchell, who is our National Director of State Advocacy and Strategy. And I'm very glad today to welcome Nic Antoine, who has recently become the new Superintendent of the Memphis Diocese of Schools. And we're really excited to welcome Nic and hear a little bit about his journey, his circuitous route from the Upper Midwest down to Memphis. And so we're gonna just jump right in. Welcome, Nic.
Thank you. Love being here, John and Shaka. And one of the main reasons that I accepted the position in the Diocese of Memphis was the fact that the ESSA program is going forth to the Supreme Court, and we are extremely hopeful for a positive outcome.
That's great. No, thanks, Nic. Yeah, and ESSA also, AKA ESA program, which is our school choice legislation here in Tennessee. Well, Nic, I thought it would be great to start with a little bit about your current role, how many schools and students you're serving, and kind of how long you've been in the seat.
Well, I've been on the ground since July 1, and there are 15 Catholic schools within the Diocese of Memphis that span preschool through college. Many of those are parochial schools and diocesan schools. There are a few schools that are independent or private Catholic schools. So they operate independently, let's say, of our diocesan or Catholic schools office, but we are all, we're 15 schools acting hopefully as one in many cases under the Bishop David Talley.
Okay, and about you, I don't know if you just said about how many students roughly across all those schools?
There are anywhere from, depending on if you're counting from the whole preschool through 16 system, I think there are probably at least 5,000 students, somewhere in that neighborhood. I know within the diocesan schools, there are roughly approximately 3,000. So,
Okay.
But somewhere around 5,000.
Okay, so a good number of kids.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit, because I think one of the most interesting things about your story and kind of background is a lot of your experience with the school choice movement in the state of Wisconsin, which has kind of been, an epicenter for going on 3 decades now. And they have a pretty robust school choice program there. And I know you worked with Governor Walker a little bit there. I would love to hear just a little bit of your history. I know it's probably hard to condense, but a little bit of the history of your work there. And yeah, we would love to hear about that.
Yeah, and I think the model that I can share with you would likely be a model that you might see in Tennessee, and that the implementation might be county by county or specific areas. So I became principal of John Paul II Academy in 2010 in Racine, Wisconsin, which is in Racine County. In early 2011, the state of Wisconsin decided to expand the voucher program, which was available, or school choice program, in Milwaukee specifically, and had been since I think the late 80s, so for about 20 years, and had been successful in that area. Governor Walker looked to expand to the Racine area specifically because the Racine Public School District was a failing public school district, had received an F as its rating. And so the Archdiocese was approached about doing this, and then the principals, of course, were approached, and of course the parishes. And so we accepted, and interestingly enough for me, at the same time that this was happening, and I think this is going to play into some of the roles of even private schools in Tennessee, there were 2 schools, St. Edward's in Racine and St. Sebastian in Sturtevant, that were on the verge of closing at that time. And I was approached and asked if I would not only bring about the voucher program into John Paul II and remain principal there, but would I be willing to principal the merger of St. Sebastian and St. Edward's. And I accepted that, maybe foolhardily. And we put that school together, and that school now operates as Our Lady of Grace Academy. So this all happened, say, in about April or May. At the same time, this is all going through the process, the governmental process, and it was approved. And then we found out that we had roughly 8 weeks to get everything in place for the new school year for 11-12. So there were 5, I think, Catholic schools within Racine County, or 6 total. 5 of them opted in, including both of the schools I was at. Now, mind you, not to put this on a personal note, but at Our Lady of Grace Academy, which was newly forming, at the same time they're asking me to bring about the voucher program, all the employees had to be terminated and then rehired under the new school system. So I had to do that as well, had no secretary, no teachers, anything. Meanwhile, over the summer, I went up to Madison and got trained on how we would do this, because the paperwork and the acceptance of students in the program, it's something we've never done. It's only been seen in Milwaukee. And so it was extraordinary. But that August, both of those schools, along with St. Joseph and maybe a couple other schools, we accepted in approximately 40 students in each of those, my 2 schools, from K to 8. It was unbelievably bureaucratic, and there was a lot of paperwork and things to do. And so that's the first point. Had it not happened, it's likely that Our Lady of Grace Academy would have probably closed because of student enrollment. With that said, I went in as a principal thinking the reason that most people would enter the voucher program and enter the Catholic schools is because of their history of success. You know, Catholic schools have been doing it right for centuries. So I thought the first thing was going to be Catholic school education and what we can bring in that form. I thought the second thing would be smaller class size, and maybe the third thing would be safer school environment. And actually, of those 3, it was flipped on its head. Once the families enrolled, and once I got to speak with them one-on-one, it was obvious that they wanted a safe school environment for their child. They wanted smaller class sizes, going from class sizes that were 30 to 40 in a classroom down to 20. And then lastly, the historic foundation of Catholic school education. And so we accepted 40 students into each, and then, you know, I'll stop for a moment, and then I'd like to share some of the personal stories of those students, because I think it's really important to share with your audience why it works, how it works, and how families can get involved in it, and to speak to people in Tennessee about why this program will save education and the lives of thousands of students within this state.
That's awesome. If I can jump in for a second, just to give our listeners some sense of the scale. So Nick, you were there at the beginning of the program when it was first started. I think you said about 40 students, you know, kind of starting. So that program in the 1920 school year had over 3,600 students in the program now. It has grown to that. There are 27 schools. This is just in the city. You know, this is just in Racine. 27 schools then were participating. That average scholarship amount is over $8,000. So, you know, between $8,000 kind of for the lower grades, and then almost $8,700. So almost $30 million now families are using to go to the schools of their choice. And, you know, I'll say as somebody who went to Catholic school, benefited from Catholic school myself, from kindergarten through 8th grade, it made all the difference, I think. And, you know, I'm so thankful for that experience. And it was also something that, and I don't know if this was your experience, but the Catholic school that I went to, it was working class, lower income families who just didn't have good neighborhood options. You know, we were part of the diocese, and it made all the difference. This wasn't, I know some people think about voucher programs or private schools, and they think that everything is, you know, kind of like these idyllic, settings where it's like 20 acres per student or something. And mine was a great school, but it was a gritty environment, but boy, it made all the difference. So thanks for the work you did. That school startup experience, by the way, is like giving me flashbacks, because that's no joke. That's the good hard work.
Yeah, let me just comment really quickly that while I did the work on the ground, what people need to know too is the tremendous courage that was exhibited by Governor Walker and approximately 6 or 8 local state reps and political persons in Racine. All of those people faced impeachment. And in fact, Governor Walker was not impeached, but one of the representatives, I think, in my particular district actually was impeached. If I was him at this day, I would still look back and say, I was able to give, as you said, now thousands of children the opportunity for a choice with successful education. And for me, if that was my case and I had to lose my job to give the children this opportunity, I'd do it because it's worth it. And so as you talked about the program in Racine, there are schools that vary. Racine, like Memphis, like Nashville, like Knoxville, is working class, middle class people, some that are more affluent than others, but the program itself can benefit schools that do have some wealthy students, but it is really meant for, and I'm going to give you those examples. It is meant for families mainly who can't do 2 things. Financially, they can't afford Catholic school or private school, and 2, they need to escape a public school district or system that is failing. And I'm going to give you, I hope I'm not taking too long, I'm going to give you the tangent of this, because you talked about how many schools and students there are now. It was interesting. A school popped up right up next to us that wanted to take on the Catholic flag. And they were not approved by the Archdiocese, and they opened in violation of necessarily Archdiocesan rules in Milwaukee. They actually secured students from schools in the Milwaukee area by using a bus. And so they called those storefront schools, because a lot of these people that will open up these kind of schools using government money are doing it for one reason: money. That school, St. John Fisher, closed within a year. So this is the main point about school choice, and it should be throughout the country. Let's make this clear. There are thousands, hundreds, if not thousands, of fabulous performing public schools and public school districts throughout this country. There are also thousands of great private schools. What this program allows people to do and families to do is have the choice. If you want your children to go to a public school, you're welcome to do so. If you want your children to go to a private school, but the main issue is allowing the choice to families. And this is going to be my point in this message throughout in this meeting today, is to say this. We talk so much in the political arena about everything else. We talk about inflation, we talk about Afghanistan, we talk about COVID, we talk about taxes and everything else. The number one factor for the 2022 and 24 political election should be based on the first thing, which is education and school choice. Because without hope for students and families in impoverished and underserved areas throughout this country, including Tennessee, they have no hope and no education, then there is no chance for success in life. So without that, and they're not educated, they can't do anything. And what is so ironic is that teachers unions, public teacher unions, who advocate so much for children in impoverished areas and throw money at the problem, they are abhorrently against school choice because of one thing. And it all boils down to one thing: the dollar sign. So the bottom line is that's what it all is about. But I can tell you firsthand, and you're going to ask me some questions. I'm going to give you specific examples of students and why it worked and how it works in Racine. But the bottom line is the number one issue for the following elections, we need to get out there. And I'll tell you a great guy who is out there, Governor Tim Scott, I think it's South Carolina, big school choice guy. And there's other people finally seeing this, that we have to talk about education, and it's not about money, it's about choice.
So when can I contribute to your campaign? That was pretty impassioned.
Yeah, do we just drop the mic and just call it right there? Goodness, that was, yeah,
Hey,
I love it.
well,
I love
and
it.
so I'm going to follow up. So I'm going to tell you, if it's okay, I'm going to tell you because I saw your questions. Here's how it worked. The way it gets implemented is the following. I wasn't in on the program until I asked this question. And this is what sold me. I went into the meeting with the officials and said, when a student is enrolled, do they have to follow the standards, spiritual, academic, and social standards of the school, including disciplinary standards? The answer back was yes. They have to follow your handbook policies and everything regarding your school. My answer was sign them up. On the first day of school at John Paul II Academy, there were two boys, both in, I think, 7th or 8th grade. I think they were twin brothers. Within 4 hours, they had disrespected students, staff, and faculty, okay? They were put on probation that day by me. And 3 months later, unfortunately, they were removed from the school, in addition to a 7th grade young lady who committed theft against a student and was later removed from the school. So we were able to remove or expel 3 students based on discipline. However, of those 40 students that were enrolled, 10 ended up on honor roll within the first quarter or first semester. And I would say 30 plus by the end of the year were on that honor roll. And so what I'm saying to you is we had the ability to dictate our standards, the high standards that Catholic schools set, and say, you want to be a part of this, follow us, follow our rules, be a part of our program, and we will welcome you in. And in most cases, I can tell you 95% of the cases, families were totally accepting. And even the children that unfortunately we had to remove, those parents, they were sympathetic and we wanted to help them. But unfortunately, the children didn't want to come around. And I will say one of the interesting points about it is St. Joseph and Racine, they only enrolled students in grades K to 4. And we enrolled students in K to 8 at the 2 schools I was at. Had I had it to do over again, I might have done it their way, because what that principal had said was, this way we're able to mold the students in our values and our formation.
Yeah,
and
you
they're
set the
younger,
culture.
they'll take it in.
Right. Yeah.
And the students in the older grades, they're somewhat already cooked, and it's difficult to get them to accept sometimes our policies. But I will tell you, my greatest legacy as an administrator and working in Catholic schools is what I did in Wisconsin, without a doubt, because Shaka, I didn't know those numbers, and I take great pride as just being one of those guys that took that ball across the goal line. What a fabulous situation. And then to bring those numbers, I'm surprised that Wisconsin and others aren't sharing that more, because this is the first I've heard of this in 10 years, because that's a tremendous success. And it will change the lives of not just the individuals, it impacts our country. Those children become productive members of society. Their families are inspired, they're encouraged, and it changes the culture and climate of neighborhoods that are underserved by poor education. So there you go.
Nick, what in terms of switching gears just a little bit, in terms of COVID, kind of last year and this year, how are you guys? I guess, how are you guys coping? Obviously, being there in Shelby County, it's there's been a lot of back and forth, mask mandates, no mask mandates. Obviously, schools were shuttered for a good bit of last year. As this school year is ramping up, how are you guys in the diocese dealing with COVID and with masks and all that? And I'm sure it's been somewhat stressful, but I'd love to hear just kind of how the how it's been with this year getting ramped up.
When I arrived July 1, we had a meeting shortly after that with all of the principals, and the consensus that would be that we would open the school year mask optional, and we issued a directive as such in mid-July. By August 1, the Delta variant had becoming more prominent in Tennessee as well throughout the country. And we then met again with our COVID diocesan response team, which includes the bishop and several administrators, along with the principals and pastors. And we decided that we would open the school year with masks in place with a requirement for that. We did have some families who did not agree with that and lobbied as such, but the majority of families were chiming for the mask mandate, and we followed through. Today, in fact, today's September 3rd, we're updating that directive and continuing the mandate, because the one thing we wanted to make sure our families knew was that we were going to reevaluate this issue every 3 weeks so that it didn't seem like it was in perpetuity. And so what we did was, when we put out the new directive in early August, we said we would run that through the end of August. And today there'll be a new letter coming out from myself that will share that we are continuing that mask mandate through September 24th. And we do this knowing that our diocesan attorney spoke with Governor Lee's people, and that his directive regarding the opt-out mandate for parents was not necessarily applying to private schools, and that we could implement our own sequences of what we wanted to do. And so that's what we are going forward with, while trying to respect local and state rules and everything. But it's been difficult. I just reported the cases this morning. We have probably this week about, if I'm not mistaken, about 8 positive student cases and 2 teacher cases, which in a school system of roughly 10 to 15 schools is relatively low. But in the task force meeting I was in today with Shelby County, we're still at an apex, and there's not been a decline in fact, the transmission rate among students is still high. And so we're doing everything we can to keep our children safe. And most importantly, the bishop came out with his own letter this weekend that really implores people, without mandating them or judging them, to get the vaccine, because the vaccine works. I am a vaccinated superintendent. I will get the booster if it's available, because the vaccine is the one fact that we know works. Masks also work, but the vaccine is proven. And so we're dealing with it. We're going to get through it, but we're not going to let it halt what we do in our schools. And so we continue to be in person all day, 365, 24/7.
Hey, Nick, what's demand look like? I know this is your first year, but I'm sure you have some numbers in terms of whether it's applications or just inquiries that office administrators and your school, your individual school principals are getting. What's your sense for demand, and how this past, really, I mean, this is our 3rd school year now that we're still dealing with COVID, disruption. So what's that look like in your diocese?
Shaka, that's a great question. Overall, our population is up. And what's interesting is there are 3 schools, St. Paul, which is and I may be in the wrong area. They call them different things like Midtown and downtown. St. Paul is in like South Memphis. Immaculate Conception Cathedral is, I think, in the Midtown area. And then St. Anne is in Bartlett. Those are 3 schools that have all seen a pretty good increase. In fact, I was just out at St. Anne. They're up 18%. IC exceeded their enrollment projected by the pastor and the principal there. They exceeded 150. And then St. Paul, which is an extremely diverse and urban area of Memphis, their enrollment's up immensely as well. These are 3 specific schools that I know would benefit greatly from ESSA, and I hope I'm calling it correct, ESSA is that name. But overall, the enrollment is up. Part of that is due to the fact that when these mandates were coming out in different public school districts from around the area, not just Shelby County, but Germantown, Cordova, all those, some of them were masking, some weren't. Parents, were deciding based on, because in public schools, you can opt out, in the sense the parents have that ability to opt out. So some families see the safety of coming into the Catholic schools, where right now we're mandating. However, we have lost a few families based on the fact that we're mandating masks, and we understand that as how it goes. But I will say that I'm 53, so I share that with all your millions of listeners, because I know you guys have them, that in my next 10 years before I retire, my goal is to bring the total amount of students into the Diocese of Memphis Catholic school system from 5,000 to 10,000. And I guarantee you that if ESSA goes through, because I was at St. Paul last week and talking with their principal, Sister Mary Lawrence, those schools like that will double. They will double in a moment because people know that Catholic schools do a great job. They have so many other benefits, including the faith and other things that you can bring to them. And so really, in many of these cases, it's almost 90% when you apply for a voucher, it's because of finances. And many of those people are even Catholic who attend Mass and things like that, or Hispanic population, but they just might not necessarily be able to afford tuition because in some cases tuition exceeds $10,000 for some of our schools, and that's an extraordinary amount of money to invest in education. So this program would be unbelievably helpful. And as you said, Shaka, earlier, the amount of money that is given per student in Wisconsin is now, like you said, is over $7,500 per student. So that's fabulous, and you'd hope to see that here in Tennessee as well.
Well, that's it's great to hear just the way that you've gone about the masks and communication with your schools and with your parents. The thing that really jumped out to me most of all, and it's tough because some people, they don't want their kids to wear masks, they don't want to get vaccinated, whatever that may be. The thing that really jumped out to me was after having children in Metro Nashville public schools last school year, and Shaka can attest to this as well. You said that every 3 weeks you're evaluating and then you're communicating to the parents, and that's invaluable. I mean, as parents who I think kind of wanted some more communication at times, that at least shows, it shows the parents, shows the families, hey, we are constantly evaluating. We care about your kids. We care about the environment they're learning in. We know that masks provide some kind of limitation, whatever that may be. But I know the parents and the families very much appreciate that, that kind of attention to detail and kind of ongoing evaluation.
Well, I appreciate that, John. Let me just add one last thing very quickly about that. I have to give credit where credit's due, because oftentimes government agencies only get flack. They're like offensive linemen. They only get talked to when they're holding.
Right.
The Shelby County Health Department, under the new Dr. Michelle Taylor, and there's also several doctors, we and other officials, local officials, meet weekly on Friday mornings and give reports. The health department has also championed the sense of the communication, the masking, but also updating, and they're evaluating weekly and daily, obviously, on their end. But their communication has been very good, and their support of all their schools, and even standing alone when this Governor Lee mandate came out, the health directive. We as a diocese said we've got to do what's best for our families and our children, and the Shelby County Health Department kind of asked how we could do that. We shared the technical or legal information, but they support us, and so yeah. I want to give them credit along with all of the other officials in the Shelby County areas, and that the Memphis hospital system is fabulous. As you probably know, I'm new to this area, but the Methodist, LeBonner, St. Jude, they are all giving great updates, and those doctors are the ones, they're apolitical. They don't have any skin in the game other than to save lives. So they don't care about any of the political stuff that has been done with this pandemic. They want to save lives and just inform people, as you said, and communicate to them the facts and figures. And that's why we're seeing a little bit of success, but we all have to go through this together. But it's not just our Catholic schools. We're doing it in cooperation with local leaders as well. And I appreciate them for that, especially being new.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. That's really, really encouraging. Yeah, definitely credit where credit's due. And I'm glad that they've been welcoming, and that it's been generally a good experience in Memphis. We are, believe it or not, we are basically at about time here, at about 30 minutes. Shaka, do you have any kind of final questions or parting thoughts?
Thanks, John. Well, again, want to thank Nick for coming on. Thanks for coming to Tennessee. We've got tremendous needs in many of our places, in many of our cities in Tennessee: Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Jackson. I mean, there are very few, unfortunately, counties or cities that are exemplars in education in our state. So we need a lot of work. But I think Milwaukee is a great example. So one of the things I hope that, our audience hears is that this might feel new in Tennessee, but this is not so novel that we don't have data. We've got some great data points. We've got some great stories about how programs like this have worked in Milwaukee. I mean, growing from dozens of kids just about less than 10 years ago to now, this program this year will probably have close to 4,000 kids. Other choice programs in Wisconsin, if you added up the numbers, you're talking about more than 40,000 kids in Wisconsin now use choice programs. That's pretty amazing. And I know that we can do a similar thing in Tennessee. So I'm looking forward to getting Nick on we got to get the Nic Antoine Roadshow going, because he's a great ambassador.
Well, thank you both for that. And as you can see, I'm extremely shy and I don't talk a lot. So I'll make sure that I give you more information next time. But let me just leave you with this. I just can't say, a couple people came up to me and said, would you ever think about moving or taking another job? And I said, the superintendent job in the Diocese of Memphis is a gift to me. It's not a job. It's the pinnacle of my career. And I said, the only job that I would take beyond that would be the job to bring school choice to all 50 states. So if I could get out there, like you said, on the road show, and I could bring it to them and say, this is it, because I was on the ground. And as you said, Shaka, a lot of people, they're going to use conjecture or speculation about choice because it's not around. The facts are, you want to look at how it worked and it brought into Racine County in Wisconsin. Look at that, and then I can give you those. I gave you some generalizations and talked about a few student issues. I can talk to you about parents who came into my office who were crying because they were so happy to get this opportunity for their children. Families who didn't speak English, who we gave the Spanish alternative to, and that there's so many ways that this can be brought forth. And again, it's capitalism at its finest, because when you do this, it will require public schools to shape up or get out, and private schools the same way. I gave you an example of a private school who tried to make a go, and they didn't make it because they didn't bring a good quality educational project to people. So it's not about religious, it's not about political, it's about taking tax dollars and putting them where they're best spent. That's what we should be looking at. It doesn't matter if a public school is doing great, let the public school stay in, and children are welcome to go there, and I'm happy for them. All we want to do is give our children hope, and I am here in Tennessee, a great state, the volunteer state, to send that message out to all who will listen. And I don't care if I have to drive all the way across the state, I'll be there on the front lines to share with legislators, with the governor, and with people on the ground, simple parents and families who want that choice. I'll tell them why it works. It is fabulous. And as I said, it's one of my greatest legacies in my educational career. So I thank you for this opportunity to bring it forth. And I am extremely happy to be part of the volunteer state.
That's great. I appreciate it, Nick. We really appreciate you coming on, and I definitely look forward to talking more, and maybe getting you on a road show and talking about ESAs and choice. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thanks, Nick.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
All right.